Welcome to the AMA Steps Forward podcast. Here we explore physician-developed solutions to help care teams and their organizations thrive. Empowering physicians, transforming practices. This is AMA Steps Forward.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the AMA Steps Forward podcast series. This is your host, Dr. Margaret Lozavatsky, Vice President of Digital Health Innovations here at the AMA. To discuss the importance of physician mentoring, I'm joined by Dr. Keshni Ramnanan, board-certified internist and chair-elect of the Private Practice Physician Section Governing Council. Thank you for being here today, Dr. Ramnanan. Before we get started, would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Thanks for having me. This is so exciting just to kind of have this conversation. A little bit about myself is I initially, outside of residency, I started working as a hospitalist. And, as soon as you come out of school, you think that you have made it and everything is just perfect and you've made it to your goal, I guess, if you want to call it that. And so right out of residency, I started working, did my beautiful 1 week on, 1 week off, and I lived my life. And then I remember getting really kind of bored, actually, a little bit, like, what do I fill my time with? And I had to relearn who I was and relearn what I liked and didn't like, because you spent so much time just studying and engaging in residency and school. And so now that you're working, I had a lot more spare time with this kind of 1 week on, 1 week off. And after working, the chief of staff actually stopped me one day and asked me, how's things going? And he asked me, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it didn't even dawn on me that there was more what do you mean 5 years? I thought that you go to school and you work and then that's it. And for him, it was just that little statement of where do you see yourself in 5 years was just kind of eye-opening. As like, well, there's more. What do you mean that there's more? And so he actually took me and introduced me to the county medical society, which was actually located at the hospital. So I just walked on the corridor, went to this thing, got some free food. And I was like, wait a minute. There's other physicians and they're talking about things that I've never heard of before, talking about practice management, talking about billing and administrative burden and burnout and all these different things. And I was like, wait a minute, there's more to medicine than even I thought. And so the County Medical Society was just my initial stepping into something outside of my work. But it was in the County Medical Society that I actually met my first true mentor in medicine. He has been a great, my work daddy, I call him. And he's opened up a lot of doorways. He's challenged me. He's introduced me to a lot of people from the State Medical Society and even into the AMA. And the thing about him is that he's like my cheerleader. And he will encourage, he's one of the best mentors ever. He just wants to encourage me. He's like, you have the potential. What about this? What about that? And he'll tell me stories about, when he was in the 1950s and the 1960s. And I'm like, oh, okay, what is the relevance of this? And what is this? And he gives me some context. And it's like, times are changing. And times are changing and medicine is changing. And you as a young physician are part of the change, and let's be part of the change and tell me more about what's life. And you have the energy. It's like, well, let's go do it. And he's just very encouraging in that sense. And even after I worked in hospital medicine for about 5-6 years, I got burnt out and I met another mentor that asked me the question of, what are your priorities? Does your priorities match up with your work? And does your work, do they match up? And so he just asked this very simple question, right? And, your job should align with your priorities in life. And at that point in time, working in hospital medicine and doing administrative work didn't really align with what I wanted and I envisioned for life. And not just only personal life, but just even from a career, it's like I felt restricted and with administrative burden. And so I flipped and started doing private practice. And my private practice wasn't like the typical where it's in the clinic. This was more in the post-acute world. So I started working in the long-term acute care settings, the LTACs, the inpatient rehabs, the nursing homes. And I started working in that. And one of the best things that ever happened for me was that my mentors were similar to me in the sense of they were private practice. Some of them worked actually in the hospital setting as well, but they were very involved in the medical society. They were very involved in the AMA. So even as I transitioned into more of a private practice setting and not having as much interaction with other physicians, the good thing is that I had my medical society brethrens. I had the ones from the State Medical Society, and then I also had those from the national, from the AMA. And so they connected me with different people. They connected me with different resources. So even when I went into private practice and worked in with this company in the post-acute world, I wanted to set up a DPC practice, and I wanted to do like a private practice, just a clinic that didn't take insurance, but had folks that had no insurance. Nobody wanted them, had a lot of psychiatric issues, and I didn't really care. I wanted the people that were underserved and people, quote unquote, didn't want them. And there were physicians that actually do the same practice. And the beautiful thing about the AMA and these mentors was that they're like, hey, I know somebody. There's this doc that does DPC, and he actually created a huge pathway of resources to be able to set up your own practice. Here is his number, here's his email, here's his website. Contact him. He'll give you everything you need. And it was just a network after network of resources just from this mentorship, just from one or two people reaching out and saying, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or, hey, you could do a whole lot. Why don't we do it? What prevents you from doing it? Let's do it. And just being a cheerleader. And so I found that, my background is like a little bit different, going from an employed model into an independent practice. My mentors have been with me throughout the entire time. And so I'm really thankful for them for that. That's my story.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your story. It's fantastic that you've been in multiple settings throughout your practice and that you've benefited from mentorship in all of those settings. Can you talk a little bit about why you think physician mentoring is so critical in today's culture of medicine?
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. I work in the post-acute setting. I work in nursing homes. And a lot of physicians are not trained to work in nursing homes. And there's a lot of new regulations coming out. And with the new regulations, it's just different way to practice. They tell you, you can't give this medication. And if you give this medication, you can only give it for 14 days. Or you can't give it period, otherwise the facility gets cited. And, there's different regulations, and you're not really taught that in school. And there's a lot of physicians in my practice that are doing hospital medicine and have either switched over to do post-acute world, or they're doing a little bit of both. And what I've found is that mentorship has come in very handy from a clinical standpoint to show them that there's different ways of practice. There's different ways from a financial perspective, to be able to, I guess, supplement your income if there's certain things that you're looking for in life, and from a quality of life perspective. But there's also different ways that there's different rules and regulations, and there's certain things that are constantly changing. And the way you learned in school and the way you practice in a hospital is different than you practice in a nursing home. It's very, very different. The clientele is very different. The patients are very different. That's their home. The regulations are very different. And so that's one aspect, when it comes to changing times, I guess, if you want to say that there's changing settings and there's different ways of practicing in different fields. But I think one of the things that I've also noticed is that the group that I'm part of, we're very open to having new providers. We kind of prefer like new docs to one extent too. They're very energetic. They're very moldable. And one of the things about with the changing landscape of things is these new physicians coming out of school, they're not used to working 24/7, 7 days a week for 365 days. They're not used to being on call all the time. And, of course, that has caused a lot of burnout for a lot of physicians. And so they're looking for much more of a quality of life perspective. And some of these new docs are coming into our practice and they're asking questions. Well, tell me how I can create a practice that is sustainable from a longevity perspective, just to be able to practice. How can I create a practice from a financial perspective is profitable, so that I can pay my bills, my student loans back, but then how can I still have a life? And so a lot of these new physicians are asking these questions. They're very excited to come into private practice, especially if they have a model or they have somebody to kind of show them how to do it. And once they step into it, they're just kind of like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been wanting to do all my time. Somebody, like a practice like this that can help me with the administrative burden, not take every single thing but at the same time have the financial rewards, but then also have the gratification from practicing with patients, but then still be able to go home and not have pajama time. And so I think the changing times have created physicians that are looking for something different. And I really enjoy mentoring some of these new docs and saying, hey, here's the practice and here's the model that we have created and come join it. But I like them because they're also showing me how medicine is changing and that we ourselves as a company, as a group needs to change and adjust how we even set up the schedule and how we set up, requirements. And patients still need to be seen, but then how do I create much more back office staff without putting up too much administrative burden or financial burden? How do I pay for the back office to support us so that we're not doing all the putsy stuff, but then not drain out from a financial perspective? So how can we be creative in a way that's just different? And so I really like mentoring these young physicians because they kind of question, because they have never been, they're like, well, why not? Why can't we do this? Same way the mentors when I was younger, they were like, well, what prevents you from doing it? Like, you want to do it, let's do it. And so the young physicians just have the excitement. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand how the process goes and what's the limitations. You have the energy and you have like a drive and somewhat of a misguided perception of what this thing should be. But at the same time, let's join it together and let's create something different. And so I really like this mentorship of the young physicians because it gives the opportunity for creativity and growth for both parties, mentor and mentee.
I appreciate that you have highlighted a few things here. You've shared a little bit about why this mentoring is so critical in your particular specialty, which I'm sure our listeners can relate to because all of our specialties have unique factors. You also shared how you yourself had benefited from mentorship and how you've also been able to provide mentorship to your younger physicians as they came through into the private practice setting. Now, many physicians may be interested in exploring mentorship either as a mentor or a mentee. What steps might someone take to execute this into practice? Do you have any particular tips for getting started?
That's a good question. I think one of the things for me, if you have a drive to put something into the next generation, I think you can mentor anybody, especially if you have the drive for that. If you want to create something and you want to put like even a legacy, like leave a legacy behind, you put something into the younger generation that's going to go and last forever. So like my mentors are gonna, well, I don't think they will ever retire, even though they're in their 70s and early 80s, I don't think they will retire. They love what they do. And I love having them. But I think one of the first things is having the drive to want to put it into someone. And if you have that drive, I think one of the beautiful things about the AMA is and interacting from the private practice is interacting with the residents and the fellows and the medical students, or even in the medical societies, you run into these younger physicians or even these medical students, and you realize some of them are, they're idealistic. They don't know what the real life is like. But I find it's very encouraging to embrace them and to just put some little statements, little thoughts in their mind. But what about this? Have you considered this? I don't know. And so I think the first step is really getting connected into who you want to mentor, whether it's the students or the fellows or the residents or even other physicians. Who do you really want to mentor? The places I've found people to mentor is, like I said, is within the medical society. But I've found that there's some of my colleagues who actually run into physicians in the hospital setting and they don't really want to mentor, but they will just kind of refer back. It's like, hey, I'm looking at something and they refer them back to me. And so I found that if you're interested in something, I don't want to say find a niche, but find the thing that drives you and the thing that you want to impart into the future generation. Some of the physicians that I work with are older and seasoned physicians, and they're switching careers to one extent. And I think inside nearly every physician is that drive to do better or to be better, or I don't say to not to disappoint, but they want to be the best. I think a lot of physicians are like that. And so within my group, I just take it as an opportunity to be like, hey, what's up? And a lot of it starts from just a relationship. And from that relationship, things click from a personality or from a desire from both parties. And so I think the practical tips I would say is find what drives you and just start connecting with people within medical societies and the AMA.
That's great. I've heard several good pieces of advice, and I appreciate that you've had such positive experiences meeting people through medical societies. Do you have any other tools that you've used that you think might be useful to our listeners?
Oh, absolutely. There's a program called Mentoring for Impact. That's something that's actually produced by the AMA, and they connect physicians with other physicians depending on what they're looking for. I believe actually you're part of that as well, aren't you? In regards to like the digital health innovations, and that has been, from my understanding, has been very, very successful. Within the private practice group, we're setting up a mentorship program where if you're a private practice physician, and you want to mentor other physicians that want to develop a private practice, we're more than happy to connect the both parties together. And so I think within the AMA itself, the key is just asking the questions like, hey, I would like to meet someone. Hey, I would like to know more about something. And there's always somebody who knows somebody.
So, are there any other pearls of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
One thing I wanted to kind of say is mentorship it doesn't have to be difficult or onerous, and it doesn't have to be something rigid and structured. Mentorship could just be a resource. My first mentor was literally a cheerleader. If I ever had a question or a concern or something in life is going on and I'm like, I don't know what to do. You've been around the block for how many years? I just need to throw some idea out. And I could just pick up the phone and call. And and he's always been a very good resource for me. Sometimes mentorship does not have to be onerous. Like I said, it could just be something as a physician resource. Mentorship looks different for everybody. And every single mentor you're going to have is going to be a little bit different as well. And so just go with the flow.
That's great advice. Thank you, Dr. Keshni Ramnanan, board-certified internist and chair-elect of the Private Practice Physician Section Governing Council, for being our guest today. Check out the episode description to explore the resources mentioned in today's episode.
Thanks for listening to the AMA Steps Forward podcast. For more episodes, resources, and CME opportunities, visit stepsforward.org.